Hello and welcome to Theater Operations Unleashed, the monthly show that explores the ins and outs of theater operations, management, facilities, and design. I'm your host, Raymond Kent. In each episode, we will be focusing on management, operations, design, trends, and best practices in the performing arts. I hope to bring you both insights from my 4 decades in the industry, as well as engaging conversations with theater professionals about the challenges and rewards of their work. We'll also cover a wide range of topics from budgeting and scheduling to marketing and audience development, theater technology, and many other related topics. Whether you're a theater maker yourself or just interested in the industry, I hope you'll find this podcast informative and inspiring. So sit back, relax, or lean in, and let's dive into the world of theater. Hello and welcome to this episode of Theater Operations Unleashed. I am here with the always lovely and wonderful Elizabeth Greer. And today we're going to be talking about Masters of Fine Arts. So welcome, Elizabeth. How are you today?
Oh, lovely to be here with you again, Ray. I am such a fan of this podcast. Theater Unleashed is where I get all of my higher education about theater.
Great. Well, it's always great to have you on. It's always really insightful, the conversations that we have. And, our relationship goes back 25 years or so.
That's right.
In this industry. And so we both have seen quite a lot, done quite a lot. And you yourself, part of what you do professionally, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, as you well know, because we met together at the Yale School of Drama. I was so blessed to be in school when you were in school. And of course, my first profession and first love is acting. That's what I do. I'm a television episodic actress. But I also happen to coach BFA and MFA collegiate auditions. And it's something that I love that I've been doing for 20 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. And I always call it a secondhand high
Yeah.
because when young performers go for these degrees and open their letter, it's as if I'm opening my letters all over again. So it's really, really exciting for me.
Absolutely. And myself being a college professor of, 25 years teaching, undergraduate,
Yeah.
Kind of hearing the hopes and dreams of the theater students that I run across, and whether or not to pursue an MFA after either a BA or BFA program is something that always comes up. And
Yeah.
so, to know that there are people such as yourself that are there to help guide them, I think is really, really critical because it's an unknown, right? So, do you want to talk a little bit about the why somebody would want to pursue an MFA?
Absolutely. I think that when we go for a BFA or a BA in theater, if that's the background that we're coming from, we definitely, are introduced to what a conservatory is, what that feels like. And I think that we develop as artists at a certain age to a certain degree. And, every arts program really is a luxury and a gift. So if it's something, whereby the actor can say to themselves, what would it be like to go even deeper?
Mm-hmm.
To be a master of fine arts is very different. Even just the verbiage of a master of fine arts versus a bachelor of fine arts. I think it's about taking skills that you may have honed prior to your MFA, and as I say, going deeper, concretizing skills for yourself even more, and kind of getting re-vetted. Because what's so interesting is every time, that you go and audition for these programs, if you are lucky enough to be accepted to one of these very competitive programs, you're going to get to meet a whole new crop of incredibly talented people that may be in your life forever. And that's really exciting.
It is absolutely, and and I'm on the technical side, you're on the performer side, and I think I know from the technical side and the design side, It's interesting to see different approaches and ideas of how to solve solutions, right? You know, how to look at scenery or lighting or costumes or sound in very different and unique ways, or even projection, which is so prevalent today. And certainly on the technical side, coming up with new and innovative ways of approaching the challenges of providing these highly intricate, highly technical shows.
Mm,
I know that in a master's program, from my experience and from plenty of colleagues who have gone through an MFA program on that side, uh, you know, it's really interesting in that knowledge sharing and a different approach than I think you find in a BFA or MFA, you know, or BA program, sorry, than you find in an MFA where there's real world application and experience, you know.
mm.
Do you want to talk a little bit about, you know, how you see what a Master of Fine Arts really is and the importance of it?
Yeah, I really feel that when you are in a Master of Fine Arts program, it's almost like you've booked a job because you're going to be at a level of professionalism and with, you know, like-minded people at a level of professionalism that really is something that you might find just walking into a commercial theater. These productions that you'll be a part of really have the best and the best. When I'm talking about vetting, what I mean is, you know, thousands of people apply to these programs and they're taking, you know, in and around, you know, 15 to maybe 17 actors a year, maybe just a few playwrights, a handful of designers, a couple of directors out of thousands of people. And you know, you couldn't ask for anything more exciting. You're going to be in productions all the time, probably twice as many productions as when you were in undergrad, because you
Sure.
may, right, you may even be in up to two or three productions at once at the same time. I remember that there was one time in which I was in three at the same time.
Oh, I
I
remember
got
that.
got blissfully, you know, ill from it.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, it's very interesting just the immersion,
Yeah.
right, that you do get, and I think it's so valuable in terms of honing your craft. I mean, there's the classes and everything else that you take, but that practical application and the consistency and quantity of opportunities because of the size, I think is really, really, really imperative.
That's exactly right.
So,
And
well, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, and these folks are all going to go into the professional world, and you may end up going right into that professional world with them.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, do you think, you know, oftentimes, like I know in our experience at the drama school, the average age was probably, you know, late 30s, maybe early 40s.
Sure.
There were certainly younger people right out of a BFA program, for example,
Right.
but they had real world experience. How important do you think that is? Or what would you say to somebody that says, you know, I just completed my BFA, I want to go right into a master's program?
Great question. So these, you know, at least in the actor classes, and I would assume it's the same on the design side, they're really taking kind of one of your type, period. And that not only has to do, let's say, with the way you look, but they're going to take one, maybe two people right out of undergrad. That's it. And then they're going to mix it up and take someone who's been out a bit longer, and then, you know, another person for another slot who's been out a bit longer than that. That's just the way that these programs go. I do think it's wonderful if you can get some real world experience prior to. I did. I had 3 years in between my BFA and my MFA,
Hmm.
and it really made me value my MFA even more because, you know, you're not going to have another time in your career in which you're busy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 years straight. I mean, unless you are so incredibly lucky in this business that you have too much employment, you will have too much employment, really, you know, in your master's program. And it's a great joy to be that smothered really with work if you love the craft of theater making and storytelling as much as you and I do,
Sure.
right? Then all of that is a miracle.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to your point about the differences, early career, mid-career, late career, people that you meet, right? And
Mm,
you can draw off of each other's experience. Maybe it's youthful exuberance or it's, honed crafts, from people who have been, either in film or on stage or on television, and almost kind of draw from that. I mean, there's always something to learn, right? But
right.
being able to have that, I think, in an undergrad situation, for the most part. I certainly have non-traditional students in my classes
Yeah.
that maybe are going back for a second career. Um, but for the most part, at an undergraduate level, you're all around the same age, have around the same experience, and you're kind of fumbling your way through academia together. But I think
Right.
in an MFA program, so much more opportunity to not only learn from amazing faculty and other professionals that maybe come in and give guest lectures,
Mm.
but from each other in terms of scope and scale of experience. Would you agree? Or
Oh, I would absolutely agree. That's wonderfully put. You're right. My goodness, they'll even take someone who's been working on Broadway and put them in
Mhm.
an MFA, because you can still go deeper, you know,
Absolutely.
in any discipline, right? As a designer, as an actor. I mean, because in essence, the MFA really, the expectations, I think, are that it is as if you were hired onto a professional job.
Sure.
Um, you're there to be trained, sure, but you're also there to give your best as much as you are possibly capable of, to give it all you've got. And that is definitely the expectation at these most highly competitive programs, that you're going to be showing up and participating and, bringing something to the table other than just yourself, that you're really going to be there to go on this journey of storytelling with an ensemble and all of the pieces that go into beautiful storytelling in the theater. It's expected that you will make your mark there as somebody not only doing the work on yourself, but helping to create a group that will move itself forward beautifully, right?
Sure, absolutely. You want to touch a bit on other people. I mean,
Sure.
certainly, again, I'm on the design technical side, and we
Right.
we met. But you want to talk about those kinds of relationships beyond just other, actors.
Sure. I think it's so important. I was always that actor that would, um, you know, try and get a gift for the design team, or, take the design team out to a drink or something like that, back when, you know, uh, people went for drinks and things like that.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm a Diet Coke gal, but whatever it is, I would go ahead and do that with the designers, because it's so important that actors understand uh, that they are only one tiny part of the whole machine of storytelling. And I think
Sure.
that's driven home, really in your MFA most of all. It's all kind of set up for you in your BFA, and you don't really realize, you know, what went into a production per se. But on the MFA level, you get to have enormous respect. I mean, I didn't know what dramaturgy was, right?
Uh,
I didn't
I
know
didn't
the
either.
Right. I didn't know the difference really between a lighting designer and a sound designer.
Yeah.
All of those things that you get to understand in your MFA, and then you never see those professions the same way again. Did you feel that way when you were working with actors? Did you see them differently in your
I
MFA?
I did. I very much did. And what I personally found interesting about an MFA program compared to the BFA program, which was an excellent program at Ohio
Mm,
University with Yale alumni as faculty,
mm,
was you're exactly right. It was almost like a segregation of there's the performers over there, there's the designers over there, and there's the technicians over there. And yeah, they kind of hung out and everything, but there wasn't this sort of investigative, almost curiosity, intellectual loitering,
Mm.
if you will,
Hmm. Hmm.
of what each person contributed, to your point, to that storytelling, right? And so working with folks like yourself or the directors or even stage management and coming up with ideas for, say, lighting of a play,
Mm.
or designing scenery for a play, of how, you know, having those kind of collaborative discussions with a performer, how it makes, what I'm doing as a sound designer or lighting designer that much better because I can play off of that and, you know, feed off the creativity in a different way than I ever realized when I was in a bachelor's program.
Right.
Right. And I see that in professional theater as well. But I think the MFA really helps peel back the veil, if you will, of the possibilities of that. And you may experience some of that in the real world before you go to a BFA, but I think that because you're all living, breathing for 2, 3 years in this program and intensity, that you really do almost move as a cohesive unit
Yeah,
throughout these worlds that we're creating.
you really do. It's so interesting. And I feel like it's such an honor to hold that crown of being called a master of fine arts. That's something you've really got to earn when you're there, right?
Yeah,
Because to be
absolutely.
called, yeah, to be called a master of anything. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, and if you think about, getting back to who else you meet in an MFA, right?
Mm,
Oftentimes the faculty are working professionals.
that's right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it's incredible to have both faculty and guest artists throughout your MFA, that already are considered even legendary in the profession, from the various playwrights teaching playwriting to the most decorated in awards design people teaching design, famous actors coming in and be it guest teaching or permanently on the faculty. It's a whole different level of professionalism.
Right.
And
And I think you also develop, um, it's almost on an equal footing in some ways, right? They
yes.
have something to teach you, but you also, and I know I'm this way with my students, I learn so much from my own students.
Mm,
But I think it's a different level of learning in a master's program
yep.
than me as somebody who teaches an undergrad program.
Mm,
That because there's still, in my side of things, a you know faculty student relationship that
yes, right.
I've got 30 years on most of these uh, people that are in the BFA programs or or BA programs or associate programs.
Sure.
Um, and I've already lived and experienced it, but I think in many ways where you are in your career, there's almost equal playing field and you can
Mm,
learn off of each other. But when you go out after your MFA, these are colleagues now. They're not, that was my professor. This is somebody that I think you really can look at as an equal and in a collegiate way that you can collaborate with in a very different way than you could, I think, feel about doing with somebody who was a faculty in a BFA or a BA program.
that's exactly right. I love that. Because you're right. Look, college age is there's still going to be some degree of babysitting happening, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Because that's what all of that fun is about. But, you know, it's a whole different world on the MFA level. You're right. These are going to be permanent colleagues, and you don't know. People can even change professions. You may one of your classmates may end up going into the world of representation and repping you at a company, right? You never know. Or someone may end up being a producer and producing some project you're on. You really never know.
Absolutely.
Right? Has anything like that ever happened to you where,
Oh, sure.
oh, I'd love
I,
to hear about it.
I
Yeah.
have I have certainly um, had some great experiences with people who were faculty
Yeah.
post graduation in terms of collaborative efforts. And so um, I look forward to those, right? Because now that we are out of the drama school, and I will be seeing a few of them in a couple weeks at United States Institute for Theater Technology conference in Columbus,
How
which
fabulous.
they always go to, and I'm there every year. And I run into them, several of the tech design and design faculty there, although I haven't seen Steve Strawbridge in a couple of years, I usually would see him there, or Ben Samler, or any of the
Sure.
other great faculty, Alan Hendrickson, they're retired now, um, but being able to talk to them at a very different level, um, about work that I have going on, and, you know, um, and what I'm doing in my career, and them, and the way that they approach me at a professional level,
Mm,
is just so incredible an experience. And I don't think I've ever had that, with the exception of one person in an undergraduate level, and it was
right.
the guy who is still the technical director of that program, a guy named Dan Denhart. He and I, 30 years, have developed an incredible friendship.
Mm,
Um, and I talk to other faculty from OU, either see them on Facebook. Most of them have retired by now. Um, but it's just a different relationship, right?
sure. I had my undergrad at NYU Tisch School of the Arts, which
Yeah.
is, another first-rate program. I was at the Stella Adler Conservatory where I
Hmm.
actually had Stella herself. And that was, one of the most thrilling experiences of my life. And again, as you know, I coach for both BFAs and MFAs. Um, but it was very much, a faculty and then the students, right?
Yep.
And so, I think what you and I are saying is an MFA, it's totally different. It's very much a collaboration. I think adults collaborating on an MFA level.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Let's switch gears here a bit. I want to talk more about the process,
yeah,
right? So, why don't you talk to me about, the application process, or what people can expect, what do they need to prepare, those kinds of things.
absolutely, absolutely. So in an MFA, on that level, what's expected, as far as a monologue is that they're looking for monologues to be, anywhere between 2 and 4 pieces, depending on which MFA you're applying for. Likely one will be a verse piece or a Shakespeare piece. And I really think that what it is that they're looking for range. So very different, let's say, than Hollywood, where you're, maybe asked to look for your type, right? They don't
Sure.
need you to type yourself. They need to see your range, really, that you can do anything. And that's really cool. So you want to find a coach, someone like myself, whereby they can help you to find pieces that are not only unforgettable, but that really show your full range of what you as an actor, can morph into and change right before our eyes. And it's pretty exciting.
Hmm.
So I, will sometimes akin it to a wedding dress. I know that a lot of my students really love, this analogy, but on your wedding day, be it that you're in a wedding dress, or let's say it's your tux, you're not going to wear the thing that your friend suggested or your thing your parents suggested. You're going to wear the thing that makes you feel like, I can't wait to be in these pictures. They're permanent. This is my
Hmm.
day, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so that's sort of how it is with trying on monologues. I have kids try on monologues until they find that one, just that one, where it's like, hey, you know what? No matter what I bring in, this piece has to be one of the pieces in my presentation. It feels like my wedding dress. It feels like this is the one I want to rock, no matter what. And then from there, I sort of help to cast the other roles, the other pieces that they'll do. So it doesn't matter if you're the piece that you are most excited about, to the one that fits you like that dress. It doesn't matter if it's comedy or drama, verse or contemporary. It just matters that it's that piece that you're doing. And then we kind of take it from there with the other pieces that you're going to show everybody, and to make sure that they're as diametrically, different to the others than that piece, so that we can show the full range.
So to use your dress analogy,
Yeah.
right? Uh, I think there's some validity to that, in that you really, when you feel that comfortable
Yep.
with that piece, it allows you to bring a level of sincerity and
Mm,
authenticity to
mm,
it that really kind of, and peels back the veil,
love that.
and allows them to see who you are as a person as well as a
Hmm.
performer.
Hmm.
And I would you say that, and I'd love your thoughts on this. Would you say that that allows the faculty, or the people looking at your audition, to see how they can make you better, or how they can advise you in being better based on
Oh,
that,
absolutely.
compared to if you had a piece that maybe was an kind of fit, and and where they're like, wow, we've got a lot of work to do with this person, just because it wasn't the right fit.
Sure, sure. I think that really trained faculty can see right away all the wonderful things that an actor is bringing to the table, and all the things that could use another little, swipe of polish onto the gemstone. I really think at the MFA level, there is so much talent, but it's really about polishing that stone,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
I think it's, do you, because if you showed up and you were just so dynamic and so
Right.
incredible, I think there's a chance that they're going to look at you and go, we have nothing to teach this person.
That's right. Because you're still there to be trained. You're absolutely right.
And yeah, and that collaborative nature again, you have to be open like a sponge to reinventing yourself in some ways, and to be able to absorb in that,
Mm.
that help, that mentorship, if you will, within. And if
Oh,
you can't
yeah.
show your willingness, I think, in the piece that you bring, that you're going to perform, that there is some vulnerability in there, that they can see how their advice and their mentorship is going to even make that even better. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I know it's that way on the acting level. How does that translate in design?
Well, so I think it's very similar in that, you show up with a portfolio of work that you've done, um, either on the technical side or on the, let's say lighting side, for example, in my case.
Mm.
Um, and you have to similarly show a range, what is your choice of color palette? What is your
How
choice of
interesting. I
angle
didn't
or
know that there
mood?
was range in the presentation on the design side. That's fascinating.
Absolutely. You have to be able to, um, think through problematically.
Mm.
Um, like I remember, I don't know if you remember this show or not, at the Cabaret. It was, um, a very shortened Shakespeare piece,
Okay.
and the power went out,
Oh, yes, I
and we
remember
did it
this.
by candlelight.
I'll never forget it. And everybody said, like, is this is story, right? This is what it's
Oh
all
yeah,
about.
and to me it was, we're grabbing every candles we could
I
find,
remember it so
and
well.
my job as a lighting designer is figure out where to put the candles on stage,
Right.
and and the performers in the show, were holding candles by their face so you could
I
see them. And it was
remember.
such an amazing show. But to me, it was thinking on your feet and solving problems, and still providing support for that dynamic storytelling that
Mm.
we do. I mean, I know people that have all kinds of money and access to all kinds of toys, and they hang all kinds of lighting fixtures and CYA lighting and
Sure.
flash and trash and everything else. And I think that that is a thing. You can do that, but can you really boil it down to the essence of what is required to help support that story, so
Right.
that you can produce world-class theater, right? And I
Right.
think if you can show that range across a variety of different types of shows, that are either stylistic or realistic, I think from a design standpoint, and still show that you're teachable, and that there's
Right.
room for growth, and that the faculty you're in front of feel that they have something that they can teach you, then that's important. I think it's same as on the technical side as well.
Oh, I
Otherwise, why would
think
they
so
invite you to
too.
come there?
And you and I have seen and been a part of more shows than we could ever
Yeah.
want in any lifetime, and yet we both remember that show and will always be part of that show
Oh, I
that we write forever.
yeah, I tell people that Cabaret was 28 shows a year, one a
That's
week.
right.
You know,
That's right.
that was that was pretty fast and furious, and with 7 venues going full time, there was
Mm.
always something you were involved in. Absolutely.
Now, it's interesting because I know that you and I were also talking about the world of electives. It,
Yes.
yeah. So, how great to be in an MFA where you actually have the option of electives. And I think when you're at one of these, finer institutions of learning, why not um, be super smart about it and add as many things to your portfolio as possible? I think you went ahead and did that in the design when you were there for design.
Absolutely. I said, I'm here at Yale. I'm going to take advantage of what Yale has to offer me,
That's right.
and which was already insane because I was both lighting design and production management,
Yep.
double majoring. And I said, I'm going to go
Incredible.
take classes over at the Yale School of Architecture if they'll let me,
That's right.
and the Yale School of Management because I wanted to learn some business classes. This is so much as you and I have talked about many times before. It's show business for a reason, and
That's right.
to have some understanding of operations and management. And I eventually did go back a few years ago and create and go through Yale School of Management's executive leadership program on
Mm.
business perspectives for creative leaders, which really reinforced.
Boy, aren't you a clever fellow? I love it.
Oh, it was a great program, and so much reinforced the things that I had taken as electives outside
Mm,
of the drama school. Now I know that it's a challenging thing to do, but if you have the opportunity and there are those classes that can be supportive of your ultimate career goals
mm,
that can provide benefit, why not take advantage of it?
that's right.
It requires more work, yes. It requires permission, yes.
Right.
But I think if you're very clear about what your goals are to your advisor and to your faculty, I think that you can get that permission with relative ease. But you have to have a plan. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to take all these extra classes," because they'll look at you like you're crazy.
Right.
Right? Like, do you realize how much work we have going on? But I think in terms of talking with Bill Reynolds, who is my advisor on the tech side, and Steve Strawbridge, who is my advisor on the lighting side, we
Mm,
were able to work out that plan, and it was. I think so much more fruitful for me, and I got so much more out of the MFA program because I think it really reinforced everything else that was part of the core curriculum of
that's
the
right.
plan and let me see things in a different light.
Yes, and again, like how what a great way to leave feeling like you really are a master of fine arts. That's such a thorough education, and that's just got to be of the highest premium I can imagine.
And
I think
and from a performance side, I mean, how do you see that? What would you like? Where would if somebody said I want to do some electives, what
yeah,
would you recommend?
I think you're exactly right when you were on to something there when you said show business. I think too many actors forget that it is in fact a business, and you could never know enough about business. We know that all the famous actors in the well, all a huge percentage of the most famous actors in the world are also producers,
Sure.
showrunners, right? Writers, all kinds of things. And you couldn't know enough about the business. It can only help you and or about business itself. So I think if you can take anything business related or learn how to manage your own finances,
Yep. Yep. I think
right?
marketing would be an interesting,
Marketing, great
would be a
idea.
great add-on if you could take it as an elective, even an introductory marketing class, something that
Yes,
because we sell ourselves, right? As designers and
right.
performers, we are only as good as our last performance, and it is up to us to sell ourselves. And so,
Absolutely. I've also
understanding that. I think really helps you.
Yes, you will always be marketing yourself, and that's a lifetime part and parcel of the profession itself. I also think that just being an actor, it's great to know things from both sides of the lens. It's great to know everything you can possibly know about directing.
Yeah.
Just to know, what is it? How does a director see you? What is director speak? What is director language? All of that is so helpful to know.
Well, I think that's a great segue to another question that I have for you. And what is it that the they, right, the they on the faculty side are
Yeah,
looking for and why, right?
right.
I think you're talking about, how do you talk, get in the mind of a director? I mean, talk to me a little bit about that.
That's right. I always used to wonder what that was, and I feel like I was so incredibly lucky to be asked back to see what all of that scribbling was on the pad, and they're of course looking for that one word that our great Earl Gister, who led my program at the time that I was at Yale, he said, what do you think I'm looking for? I'm looking for talent, and I love that as the simple answer. I think the more detailed answer is they're looking for somebody who is any or all of the following things, in good shape mentally and physically, um, attractive, which doesn't necessarily mean in a conventional way at all. What I mean by attractive is someone who has charisma,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? Someone, probably with, I mean, this, it's almost like dating, right? Someone with an excellent sense of humor, with an ability, to be gregarious and want to create things with other people. People who are highly intelligent and well versed. You really get, some exquisite offerings of the human race
Yeah.
coming coming through these programs, but that's what they're expecting, of sound mind and body, and ready to give and go to the limits of all of those things, both intellectually, physically, spiritually, you know people that are willing to push themselves in all of those areas to the absolute max of their ability. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for thoroughbreds, as we used to call them. And that, analogy is only to say, a thoroughbred as a human being, someone who is just ready, um, externally, internally, upside down, head to toe, ready to put themselves into the art of storytelling.
What do you think about humility?
I think it is so important that you brought that up. It has to be that way, because otherwise it's just about your need to um, want to be well known, and that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for people who are humble enough to be able to really feel feelings, and when you feel feelings, you not only want to make stories with other people, but you want to make stories about what the writer was trying to say, not about people noticing you, but about conveying a story that the writer put together.
That
And
is such an excellent point. I think that, that vulnerability
mm,
and the, recognition, as we talked about earlier, to know that you're just a small part of this,
that's right.
world. And, we all have known people who are not as humble as they probably should be,
Yep.
um, that may get parts for some reason, but
Right.
at the end of the day, nobody wants to work with them.
That's right.
And I think that in some ways, getting into an MFA program, you have to be a bit on the humble side to
You
be
do.
willing to accept criticism,
Yep.
be torn down a bit,
Yep.
and just so that you can be built back up, and look at yourself in a very different way, and realize that you are just one cog in the machine.
Yes.
But everybody has a part to play. We, as we've joked before, right? Without lighting designers or sound designers or costume designers, actors are just naked in the dark, speaking to nobody, right?
That's
Um,
exactly right.
And so we all play an amazing part in this journey of being storytellers.
Right.
And I think MFA programs in particular, and the work that you do and coaching people to get into these programs, and me as an undergraduate faculty trying to prepare people for a career in this.
Mm,
Really, I think humility is something that I see as probably one of the most uh, necessary traits to
hmm.
getting into an MFA program. I don't know if
That's
you agree
right.
with that or not.
I couldn't agree with it more. Because ultimately, talk about sustainability. If you want a sustainable career, it's going to have to be coming out of humility and vulnerability. I think
Mhm.
otherwise it just fries. It will just burn itself out.
Yeah,
It,
I think, and I think that kind of leads into another question here. What skills will you have
Mhm.
retained other than acting or auditioning or, those are
Yeah.
mechanical things, I think, in some regards, right? There's a craft to it. But there are other skills that I think are more on the softer side. I know
Mm.
certainly from a design and technical side, I've garnered some of that in terms of communication, collaboration. But what do you see um, beyond the MFA once you get out, or things that you hope to get out of an MFA program that are more than the nuts and bolts
Sure.
performance?
Yeah, I think that what's so great is you're going to leave with all kinds of skills that are in addition to just acting and auditions for acting projects. Certainly your public speaking skills, right, will have hopefully quadrupled by the time you leave an MFA.
Hmm.
You're going to leave in amazing shape. I was never in as a great shape
Yeah.
physically, right,
Oh yeah.
as I was then.
I will never see a 29-inch waist again. I will tell you.
Right? I'm telling you. I'm telling you. And I think your stamina, right? Because it really is like almost being in a military boot camp. Your stamina will blow your mind. Everything will kind of seem easy after grad school. As far as my God, you're just pushed to the limits physically, intellectually, every way you could possibly think of in a grad program, and you may or may not be after school.
Sure.
So, you've also now got the ability to teach, right, on the undergrad or graduate level, which is incredible, or coach, as I do. Um, I know different MFA grads that started all kinds of companies, again, on public speaking, on storytelling, on executive coaching, all kinds of things. What other professions do you think are perfect for that out of an MFA?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. But I think within this, of looking for what are those other skills and everything, talk to me a little bit about do's and don'ts once you're in the program.
Hmm. Well, we all say don't date anyone in your program, and I think that's a bit of a fantasy.
Yeah,
But I do think it's recommended, certainly in the sense that you are going to be working with people. And if you can see grad school as partially social and partially just business, right, then
sure.
it is of help, because it's always why, it might be great to date someone outside the program. It's interesting because you're constantly kind of going up and down the scale of professional, personal, how to weigh it all out. It's a wonderful. Hey, I just thought of another profession. You could go into politics, right?
Oh, absolutely.
in,
Absolutely.
in a
Yeah.
minute flat, because all of that is political as well. I also think that, if you can get your mental health handled as much as possible before the program,
Yep.
be in really sound mind body shape, addictions, anything that you need to get on top of, it's a great idea to do that prior to the program, because you will be pushed to the limits, and you will, your body and mind will be asked to do things that you would never be asked to do in another circumstance.
Sure.
um, so I think that you have to be very, very graceful about how you conduct yourself, because it really is partially show business already once you're in your MFA, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, your point about, any um, demons in the closet, if you will,
Yep.
that you have before coming to the MFA program is so critical, because you really get stripped down, not just on the performance side,
Right.
on the design side, on the technical side. You're absolutely right. These are tough programs to get through, and
They
you get
are.
stripped down to, your naked self that
Right.
you have to deal with,
That's right.
in a very raw way, and still expect to show up to class, show up to rehearsal,
That's
show up
right.
to performance, show up to production, you know, um, bring your A game,
Yep. And
and
it's all the time. There is
all the
no break.
time.
Yep.
And I remember, sitting in Ming Cho Lee's class every Saturday and having, Ming talk to you about a design, and you would either feel like you were floating on a cloud or that you were half a millimeter tall. And
Yeah, exactly.
because you could get completely torn to shreds over something that you put your heart and soul into.
Right.
But you had to keep in mind the entire time it wasn't personal,
That's right.
that it was about bringing your best self, and
Right.
that your faculty and fellow students, for that fact, are there to help support you and
Mm.
help you grow. And that becomes your network, your support network, that really can make or break people in an MFA program.
Yeah,
And I think if you don't
abs
deal with those things ahead of time, it
that's
just
right.
puts mountains in front of you.
It really does. It's so interesting too that we know a lot about what goes on a professional sports team,
Yep.
right? There may be drug testing. You may need to get your nutrition in order, your fitness in order. It really is the same way in the world of storytelling. It's exactly the same demands as professional athleticism, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But we see that. So, to your point, we see that so often in professional sports. I'm in Cleveland, right? We have the Cleveland Browns,
yeah.
and we've had, I don't know how many quarterbacks or other players who are young, don't
Mm,
deal with that, wind up, going out and train wrecking themselves mentally and physically, and then
right.
they can't bring their A game.
Right.
And so that, that impacts everybody around you. And so if you show up to a show and you're, you know, not in the right frame of mind,
That's right.
you're not only bringing everybody else and their A game down,
That's right.
right? But you're impacting the quality of the show, the quality of the production, and, and what you could bring
That's
to
right.
yourself and the show and the profession, right?
That's exactly right.
And so I think, that should be a consideration about, am I really ready to go into a Master of Fine Arts? If you got to do a check of your own house and
That's
make
right.
sure that you do have all the ducks in a row.
That's exactly right. It's so interesting, right?
Yeah, and approaching the top of the hour here, and
Mm.
as you and I always are, we could talk endlessly about these
We
things.
enjoy each other so much because our hearts are in the
Absolutely.
same
And
place.
I know you and I have planned many more conversations coming up here in the very near future, and I'm really
Hmm.
looking forward to those conversations as well, as
Me
we
too.
really peel back the onion of, this business, this crazy business that we call show business. Um, any final closing thoughts of things that you could think of that would be important for people who are considering an MFA, to think about, as they're going through
Yeah.
that?
Well, we you can read a little bit more about what I do on my website, which is elizabethgreer.com. That's where I have all my collegiate coaching going on. And I think just the last thing I would say is a lot of these schools may take more than one try to get in, and it's worth it. For the acting program, they usually keep things on a 3-year file and expect that you may be auditioning up to 3 years in a row for said school. I think all I can say is keep at it. It's worth every try. If you do try the first time and it doesn't happen, don't get discouraged. It's worth picking yourself up and refocusing and getting right back in that game again.
On that note, and just real quick, because I know we're coming
Yeah,
up on time here. I think research of what that MFA program and who the faculty are and what the outcomes are and who, and try to talk to some alumni because not every program is the same as we know, and
yeah,
not every outcome is the same. And I think somebody who's thinking about an MFA needs to really understand what their expectations are and
that's
look at the
right.
schools that really align with those
Mm,
in the best possible way. Like, hey, we'd love it if everybody went to the David Geffen School of Drama, right? But that program might not be right for everybody,
right.
right? And so I'm sure in your coaching, those are the conversations that you're having, are they not?
Absolutely. What program might be right geographically speaking? What are the perks? Every program is in competition with another great program. So there may be one perk here that's different from another perk there. Maybe one place has a newly redone amphitheater, maybe the other one. The location, lends itself to something very special. Every program is going to be different from another one, but the great news is the right program will find you and you will find the right program.
Absolutely. And I think that's where we'll leave it off for this. Again, you can check out the great work that Elizabeth does at elizabethgreer.com. I will post a link
Yeah,
in the podcast. And
lovely.
again, as always, Elizabeth, it's fantastic to talk to you. I love our conversations.
I
I'm
do
certainly
too.
looking forward to the many more that we have already talked about and planned. We have a list,
I
and
will come on
it's
this
an
amazing
exciting list.
show.
So I hope everyone tunes into those as well. And again, thanks for tuning in for our hour here at Theater Operations Unleashed. And until next time, we will talk to you soon.
You're the greatest.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for taking the time today to listening to Theater Operations Unleashed. We hope to see you next month.